over this next month or so, we're really going to be talking about the kind of relationships that have the potential to really change the way that we see God, others, and ourselves too. So we're really diving into a conversation about the complex and complicated parts of dating and relationships in the high school phase of life, which is super fun. So whether you guys have dated before, you're currently dating somebody, you've never dated anybody, you're not even interested in it, this talk is for really everybody. So this is something that anybody can relate to. So I kind of feel like the term dating is a very vague way of describing relationships, because there are a lot of different words that you guys can describe and categorize dating, because maybe you're just hanging out with somebody, right? You're just hanging out. Maybe you're in a situationship. You don't really know what's going on, but it's a situation. Maybe you're just talking. So it's more than hanging out. You're talking. Or maybe you're still trying to convince your best friend that you and someone else are just friends, even though maybe you're not just friends. So so we're all on the same page, I'm going to use the term dating and define it as being in a relationship however you would label it. So whatever you would label that relationship, where the other person means more to you than just a good friend. So something more than just being best friends or besties or a friend with somebody else, where maybe you're catching feelings. We're all good on that page. When it's called dating, it doesn't have to be serious, we're officially dating. It could be you're talking, you're doing anything, cool. Okay, the thing is, we want, as small group leaders and me, want to help you date well, which is why we're doing this talk. And so maybe some of you guys are I don't know about this talk, and you're not really interested in getting personal with it because maybe dating is really far from your mind and your priorities right now. You have other goals, you have other ambitions, or it's just something that's not really that big of a deal. You haven't really thought too much about it. So you're thinking, why worry about something that isn't that important right now? Maybe you look around in the world right now and there really isn't anybody that you'd be interested. You're okay with wanting to date, but there's not really anybody that you're actually that interested in school or youth group or anything like that. Or maybe you know exactly who you want to date, but they aren't interested in you. And so you're sitting there thinking, why, dear God, have you forsaken me? I'm just kidding about that last one a little bit. There's been points. We've all been there. Anyways, regardless of how you would rate your interest in dating, from I'm going to be single forever to I am waiting on that soulmate there, chances are that a lot of us at some point during our lives are going to have some type of experience with dating. And if you're going to have a relationship one day, what we're talking about tonight can give you the best shot at having a great experience when you do join the dating world, or you do go out on a date, or you do something. And so I just want to be real for a minute. I am a youth pastor, and I say that the Bible doesn't talk explicitly about dating the way that we think about it today, right? When we look at the Bible, it does not talk about how we would describe relationships, especially too because they were just married off. There was no dating phase. There wasn't really any, oh, I'm interested in this person. It was you arranged a marriage basically and it happened, right? But despite of the lack of explicit or crystal clear instruction, I really believe that there are still very important and helpful things that we could learn from Scripture when it comes to dating really well. And so tonight we're going to be looking at a practical section of the Old Testament called Proverbs. And so this entire book is dedicated to wisdom. And by wisdom, I just mean knowing what is good, right, or best given a particular set of circumstances. And so this book of Proverbs was actually written by a man named Solomon. We have talked about Solomon before. He was known as the wisest man to ever live. He asked God when he was in his 20s, hey, I really want to be wise, and God gave that to him. Wasn't to say that he didn't make his mistakes. He was kind of just like us in some ways, and he learned some things the hard way. And so one bit of wisdom that Solomon records in Proverbs 24 is probably a lesson that he might have learned the hard way. So it's up here. So it says, put your outdoor work in order and get your fields ready. After that, build your house. So the question is, what does the scripture have to do with dating, right? It's talking about field work and building a house. We're going to get to that in a minute, but let's run with it here, okay? So, have you guys ever seen a big tractor clearing out a piece of land? before building something on it, right? Now you have. If you haven't, you see it now. So, this is what happens after the blueprints and the architectural plans are created, after the land is cleared, a foundation is laid. So, if you don't know what a foundation looks like, guys, I have a picture for you. This is what a foundation looks like. So after the land is cleared, a foundation is laid while all the supplies and the tools are being gathered and getting ready. And so all of this happens before a house is built, right? So the wisdom that Solomon writes here is that we can be really relevant to us today. So what Solomon is saying is, 1, prepare your land so that you could build a strong and stable house. And then 2, we don't need to put those up yet. And then 2, get to work building your strong and stable house, right? Those are the 2 important things. And so, guys, a big part of building a house happens before the walls even goes up. Well, you probably just want to start building immediately. You have the big dream of what you have in mind for this amazing dream home. You don't want to skip steps or move too quickly, because we can have to take the time to build the best foundation that we can so that we can have the best potential to move forward well when it comes to building our houses. So when preparation is really the foundation on which success is built. And so that sounds great, right? Preparation is the foundation in which success is built. This means that we need to be prepared at all points. That's cool. But also, we've all had times where we've struggled with this, right? We've all had times where we have had a test coming up, but we didn't study for it until like the night before, or even maybe 10 minutes before. We know that we have to have a certain GPA to get into a certain college that we might want to get into, but maybe we don't start taking our grades seriously until like junior, senior year. Or we have a big recital coming up or a big game, but we don't really start taking it seriously until like a couple of days before. We all do it. There's no shame in the game. That's something that happens. And sometimes it could be smart to look for the easy way out or the easy route, but life doesn't always work that way, right? It's not always going to be easy. And so if we want things to turn out to the fullest potential, which we all do when it comes to dating, right? We all want to have the fullest potential out of our dating lives. Then we need to take the best steps forward that we can to make it and do it in the right order. So what am I trying to say here? How in the world do fields and foundations and building houses apply to dating? So that's what Jonathan had up here. 1, we prepare yourself so that you can build a strong and healthy relationship. And then the second one is to then get work on building a strong and healthy relationship, right? This can make all of the difference in the world when it comes to dating. Relationships can really play a big role when it comes to shaping who we become. Whether or not we want it to, sometimes that happens. And so whether things work out with a special somebody or you eventually go your separate ways, the decisions that you make while you can date can shape you in a lot of different ways. And so I like to kind of think about it like this in this next slide up here. And thinking about it in the sense of who you date might be temporary. So you might not be with the person that you're with forever, but who you become is lasting. Who you are in that relationship and afterwards is what is going to stick with you, whether or not you stay in that relationship. And so we are truly laying the foundation of who we become today. Our character, our faith, our choices. And yes, God is always in the process of helping us grow and change. But if we want to have the best dating potential that we can, it starts with us taking a hard look at ourselves instead of just waiting on the other person, waiting for that right person to come to us. We can lay the foundation to becoming the kind of person that we want to be or the kind of person that we want to date. We can start doing laying the foundations of being that person, whether or not things work out with that person that we're dating. So I want to take a look at another piece of scripture here that is written about love by the Apostle Paul. So Paul was a person who wrote most of the New Testament, and he was one of the most arguably influential leaders of the early church. And so it's probably something that you guys have heard before, but we're going to read through it here. It says, "Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable, and it keeps no record of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful and endures through every circumstance. I mean, isn't that what we want when it comes to love? When it comes to dating? Wouldn't that sound really nice? Most of us hear that list and think, okay, if I could just find somebody like that, then dating will go perfectly, right? And while that might be true, sometimes it's a lot easier to look at somebody else than it is to turn the mirror and look at ourselves, right? So what does this piece of scripture have to do with us? What does this piece of scripture and dating have to do with us? It means that before we start looking at these incredible qualities in somebody else, we have to start to be doing the work at looking at these qualities in ourselves. Learning to live that way and becoming the type of person that Paul writes about here is helpful whether or not you're dating. I mean, being patient, being kind and humble will make anything better and stronger, whether or not that's the person you're dating or just your friends or your family or maybe possibly your potential dating life. We tend to think that when we meet the right person, then we'll just magically treat that person well. It just magically work and it'll happen. I thought that a lot of the times, if I could just meet the right person, then everything will be fine. We'll never have any issues. Guys, when I met Josh, things did not always go perfectly, right? Because the truth is, when it comes to loving someone really well, it takes practice. We don't become patient and kind overnight, and we certainly don't become patient and kind by accident. It takes effort and it takes preparation. So regardless of where you're at when it comes to dating, just know that it's never too late to be able to start working on these things. Even if you're in a relationship already, and maybe things have been tough, or maybe you were in a relationship and things were tough, making a decision now to start moving in the direction that Paul calls out and lays out is exactly the kind of wisdom that Solomon is talking about when it comes to laying those foundations. And it might be even better if you're not in a relationship, because then you could truly take the time to work on yourself. You could truly take the time to kind of look at that mirror and see, ooh, I need to be better at being patient or kind or humble or whatever the thing is. And so these are actually two practical steps that we can do to start moving forward and doing this. So the first one we see up there is choose who you want to work on becoming. So a lot of us think, you know what? As long as we're attracted to each other, it's going to be fine, right? Because that's kind of the first thing when we think about when we are thinking about a potential person. I have feelings for that person. I find them attractive. I like them. Then it's going to be fine. We're going to be good. There's going to be no issues. But guys, you can't clear a field and build a strong foundation with just a hammer, right? Nobody can go into a field and clear the entire thing with a hammer. You need a shovel. A saw. What? Yeah, the rest of your life, a drill, a level, a tape measure. I don't know, I'm just naming off random tools. But the thing is, 1 Corinthians 13 is preparing your field and building your house. You have different and important tools to be able to build it correctly, right? Things that are going to make it, maybe one day you could eventually use that hammer to clear the field. But wouldn't it be so much easier if you had other tools in front of you to be able to help make it better and easier? I think it would. Yeah, I think it would be better than just using a hammer. Guys, love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not jealous. It does not demand its way. Paul gave us a lot of opinions to work with, so it might be easiest for us to shrink it down a bit. So when it comes to the second one, practicing. So this week, I want to challenge you guys to focus on maybe just 2 qualities that Paul talks about. Maybe it's being patient and kind. Maybe it's being humble and forgiving. Or maybe it's being hopeful and gentle. And I know that 2 doesn't seem like a lot, but these qualities are really hard to be able to develop and live out. I have a hard time living these qualities, and I'm married to somebody, and I'm in a fully committed relationship, and sometimes being gentle with Josh is not my forte, right? It is still things, what? No, I don't beat him up. Sometimes starting with small things can really help you out. We can work on these things all the time, whether we are dating, whether we're not dating, whether we're in a relationship, we're not in a relationship, we're ready for it, we're not. You could practice them with every person that you interact with. And guys, if you do end up dating somebody someday, or maybe you are still not interested, if you're in a relationship, a friendship, things aren't always going to be easy. The person you date will literally get on your nerves. You it'll not be all of the rainbows and butterflies that sometimes the movies or the TV shows picture it out to be, or maybe even sometimes your friends talk about it. Because sometimes in relationships, not everybody talks about all of the hard stuff. They just want to talk to you about the good stuff. It might not seem so perfect, and being patient and kind might become difficult when you're in the middle of a relationship. And so that's why it's so important to start building these qualities right now, so then they'll come a lot easier when it does come to that time. So practicing any of the qualities in 1 Corinthians 13 can have a huge impact on your relationships and ultimately your own life when it comes to any type of relationship, but especially when it comes to dating. If we want to see something in somebody else, if you want somebody to be kind to you and patient with you, then you need to make sure that you're showing up and bringing those things to the relationship. Especially too, because who you might date might be temporary, but who you become is lasting. So if you work on those things with that person in that time and being patient with that one person, that's going to continue with you when you come to dating another person if it doesn't work out. It's not something that just ends with that one person. Well, that's all I have to say about this talk today. I really hope that you guys were able to start getting some foundations and we could start this conversation. And I know that it's a weird talk and sometimes it's kind of awkward, but I think it's really important, especially as Christians, and how we know how to hold ourselves when it comes to dating and relationships.